This is part of a lecture that Paul and I wrote called "Before Swimming Further We Have to Clear the Water." When recently talking to a newspaper reporter, I was trying to outline what I consider to be the dangers of entertainment. He consistently believed that if people enjoy what they see and hear, it is of some value. I could not cancel out my belief that at this time cultural self-alteration is necessary for our survival. Later on that evening, describing the conversation to Sue and David Smith, I realized the present difference between art and at least medicine being the most publicly involved science. When people suffer from ailment or disease, they visit their doctor expecting treatment based upon the analysis, experimentation, and findings of the last 50 years. However, when the same person attends a theatre, concert hall, and any such place for mental stimulation, the experimentation of the last 50 years is not evident. 19th century philosophy is certainly in abundance, although what it has to do with our present well-being is at most tenuous and remote.
Meaningless Work by Walter de Maria, March 1960. Meaningless work is obviously the most important significant art form today. The aesthetic feeling given by meaningless work cannot be described exactly because it varies with each individual doing the work. Meaningless work is honest. Meaningless work will be enjoyed and hated by intellectuals, though they should understand it. Meaningless work cannot be sold in art galleries or win prizes in museums, though old-fashioned records of meaningless work, most oil paintings, do partake in these indignities.
During the W.O.R.K.S festival in July, I decided to perform a transit piece. It was to take place during the rush hour late afternoon on a trolley bus. The performance procedure was as follows. A group of participants would board the bus at consecutive stops, each individual carrying a cumbersome object, chair, broom, animal skull. After travelling 2 stops, the performer gets off, is picked up by a car which has been following the bus, is taken 2 stops ahead, this time boarding the bus holding a balloon. I think there were 6 of us, 2 cars and 3 children. Now, although we were clear about the route and the bus number, the exact bus we were going to use, it seemed we had never really known agreement. At that time of the day on that route, there was 1 bus every 3 minutes or less. I had said as we were being dropped off that it should be the 3rd bus which came along. As I was recording the event, Sue and I were the first persons to board. As I stepped on, I stamped the bus with a rubber stamp as some visible evidence. We reached the first stop and the girl who was supposed to board was looking away from the bus. The second stop was the same. Some people had got on the bus which went before ours, and so there were variations of confusion. It was a transit piece, though not the work I had written. The unexpected was for us and not the passengers. So likening this experience to a concert, surprise is essential for my enjoyment of performing as much as surprise is necessary for the audience if we both wish to engage ourselves in a meaningful activity.
Like ordinary work, meaningless work can make you sweat if you do it long enough. By meaningless work, I simply mean work which does not make you money or accomplish a conventional purpose. For instance, putting wooden blocks from one box to another, and putting wooden blocks back to the original box, back and forth, etc., is a fine example of meaningless work. Or digging a hole and covering it is another example. Filing letters in the filing cabinet could be considered meaningless work, only if one were not a secretary. If one scattered the file on the floor periodically so that one didn't get any feeling of accomplishment. Digging in the garden is not meaningless work. Weightlifting, though monotonous, is not meaningless work in its aesthetic sense because it will give you muscles and you know it. Caution should be taken that the work chosen should not be too pleasurable, lest pleasure becomes the purpose of the work. Hence, sex, though rhythmic, cannot strictly be called meaningless, though I'm sure many people consider it so.
David Smith teaches electronics at high school. He came by one evening to take some photos with a modest camera and knotted string which he uses to measure distance, counting 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, as he took photos in almost inadequate light. He mentioned a daily activity which he had started called Loony Costumes. It involved programming a combination of clothes to be worn to work each day of the lunar month, to remind himself of how the moon's period affects his physiological and psychological makeup. Sosnowski of the Actual Arts Group Poland wrote recently, and uses similar behavior in what he calls the minimum disturbance of the course of reality. Loony costumes goes undetected. It is the arrangement of 7 jackets, 4 pants, and 4 different colours of shirts. Combinations go from the lightest, most patterned to darkest, very dull. On the full moon he wears the lightest, brightest combination, and as the cycle goes toward a new moon, he wears contrast patterns which change often. On the new moon it is a black shirt and dull colours, then the cycle reverses. As he pointed out, since his socks, underwear and shoes are the same colour, they are not altered. Far better that we manifest change in our minute-to-minute lives than periodically synthesize change for the gallery, concert or street demonstration.
Meaningless work is potentially the most abstract, concrete, individual, foolish, indeterminate, exactly determined, varied, important action and experience that one can undertake today. This concept is not a joke. Try some meaningless work in the privacy of your own room. In fact, to be fully understood, meaningless work should be done alone, or else it becomes entertainment for others, or the reaction or lack of reaction of the art lover to the meaningless work cannot be honestly felt.
Consider the experience of surprise or shock. When you are forced to stop and think, even if only momentarily, this is a kind of disengagement from the texture and style of the concerns of the moment. However simple and straightforward our daily lives may seem, they are in truth terribly complex. What shock does in effect is to force into awareness, though it may be only momentary, a fundamental taken for granted assumption that had hitherto been operative but not recognized as such. In short, the disengagement through shock is a kind of reflective grasping both of things in the environs and of your own typical ways of dealing with them. Our technocratic attitude probably conditions us to assume that we can know something or learn about anything within a specific time and or with concentrated effort. This smugness also permeates into our recreation. Many activities which describe themselves as music or art or drama are nothing more than entertainment, based on common sense as opposed to uncommon sense. We perpetuate common denominators of emotion, aesthetic taste and sanity as if it were possible to have a collective idea of reality.
Meaningless work can contain all the best qualities of old art forms such as painting, writing, etc. It can make you feel and think about yourself, the outside world, morality, reality, consciousness, nature, history, time, philosophy, nothing at all, politics, etc. without the limitations of old art forms.
Higgins to relieve indigestion.
Anyway, the 17th goes into the 18th, then the 19th, then the 20th. The 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, the 29th, the 30th, the 31st of January. Thus time goes by. In the depth of winter, 100,000 years ago, on the 17th of February for more exactitude, a man bent to the ground and took a handful of snow. Who that man was is not important. He is dead, but art is alive. I mean, let's keep names out of this. Bending to the ground then on the 17th of February, 100,000 years ago, a man took a handful of snow. He held it to his ear. He squeezed the snow hard. He heard. Try it sometime. Take a bottle of vinegar in your right hand. In your left hand, take a piece of chalk. Let a few drops of vinegar fall on the piece of chalk and see what happens. But perhaps what you see is not important. Anyway, the 17th goes into the 18th, then the 19th and the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, and every 4 years, the 29th of February. Thus time goes by. The 17th of March, 10,000 years ago, a man bought himself a bottle of beer. Who that man was is not important. He is dead, but art is alive. I mean, let's keep names out of this. A man then on the 17th of March, 10,000 years ago, bought himself a bottle of beer. He opened it, he drank the contents. Now he thought the bottle's empty. Or is it? That is, he asked himself, is there really nothing in the bottle? My wife also, when she walks in the fog, often wonders what is fog. And when she looks at the clouds, she wonders what are clouds, or so she tells me. But perhaps what my wife tells me is not important. Anyway, the 17th goes into the 18th, then the 19th, then the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, the 29th, the 30th, the 31st of March. Thus time goes by. 1,000 years ago, on the 17th of April, a man went to the butcher and bought a fresh bone. Who that man was not important. He is dead, but art is alive. I mean, let's keep names out of this. So this man bought a fresh bone. On the 17th of April, 1,000 years ago, he boiled it. For an hour or so, he boiled the bone. When he took it out, its aspect he thought was not the same. You yourself can verify it. Spread glue on your floor. Next to it, spread tar. I went down to the basement of his house. Who that man was is not important. He is dead, but art is alive. I mean, let's keep names out of this. A man grabbed a hammer and went down to the basement of his house, the 17th of September, 100 years ago. He got a piece of anthracite, then a piece of charcoal. He put them side by side with a hammer. He hit the anthracite, then he hit the charcoal, then he compared the results. As for you, if you wish, light a candle, put some flour in the palm of your hand, blow the flour into the flames of the candle. Do you hear anything? But perhaps what you hear is not important. Anyway, the 17th goes into the 18th, then the 19th, then the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, the 29th, the 30th of September. Thus time goes by. 10 years ago, precisely on the 17th of October, a man caught a frog. Who that man was is not important. He will die soon, but art is alive. I mean, let's keep names out of this. The 17th of October, I said 10 years ago, a man caught a frog. He held it in his hand. He looked at it closely and wondered, can the frog hear noises? He looked for the frog's ears on its head. A friend of mine whose eyesight is perfect likes to read the morning newspaper by holding it in front of a short-sighted man's eyeglasses, and in the evening he reads the newspaper by holding it in front of a long-sighted man's eyeglasses. He says he finds it fun, but perhaps what my friend finds is fun is not important. Anyway, the 17th goes into the 18th,
then the 19th, then the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd, 24th, the 25th of December. That on the 25th of December, Jesus was born, so the Christians say. The Jews deny it. The Muslims are in two minds about it. The Buddhists don't care, nor do the communist and the atheist. As for the artist, well, what the artist believes is another story.
This piece is called Performance Piece Number 8. It was written summer 1965 by Alison. Everything's labeled something.